This is a full story. Puppy wishes you all a happy and enjoyable story. My boyfriend, right in front of me, was kissing and kissing with another woman and even told me not to be unreasonable. I nodded, threw a right hook, and told him not to scream in pain. After arriving at the police station, I was drunk and cried loudly on the shoulder of the police officer, saying I wanted to marry him. The police officer said he was married but could introduce me to his nephew, who was also a police officer. I looked at the tall, strong, and very manly police officer, with his height of 187 centimeters, long arms and legs overflowing with hormones, and nodded, "All right, today is my boyfriend Tony's birthday." I meticulously organized a birthday party for him and invited all his friends. His friends were all heavy drinkers, but I can't handle alcohol well. But for Tony's sake, I drank. He didn't stop me or help me. Instead, he egged me on. After 2 bottles of beer, I covered my mouth and ran to the bathroom, throwing up until my limbs felt weak before coming out. Tony didn't follow me. I didn't think much of it, washed my face, and went back to the private room. As soon as I stepped outside the room, I heard loud cheers inside. Kiss. Kiss. I was puzzled about why Tony, the birthday boy, was being overshadowed by someone else kissing. When I opened the door, Tony was passionately kissing Serena, who was supposedly his brother. They were kissing hotly, clinging to each other, and it made me gag again. Fortunately, I had already emptied my stomach, so there was nothing left to throw up. My gagging caught the attention of someone closest to me, who turned around, saw me, and awkwardly nudged his buddy. One by one, everyone turned to look at me. Tony and Serena were still lost in their kiss. I expressionlessly pressed my hand to my chest, trying to suppress the urge to vomit. Someone couldn't stand it and reminded Tony. Tony then reluctantly pulled away from Serena, only to have a thin, glistening strand of saliva connecting their lips. I looked at them with a face that said, like a subway uncle checking his phone. Tony, flustered, tried to explain, but, probably mindful of his friends, kept his composure, and said in a somewhat "don't be unreasonable" tone, "This is just a game of truth or dare. Don't be unreasonable." He really knew me well. I am indeed quite unreasonable. I nodded. This is just a right hook, so don't scream in pain. With that, I threw a powerful right hook at Tony. Caught off guard, Tony was knocked over. Seeing Tony getting hit, Serena flared up and tried to rush at me. I smiled. So this is the pure brotherhood they talk about? I had practiced Sonda before, although it was only a bit. Dealing with Serena was no problem. I remembered how she had secretly made my life difficult when Tony and I were dating. I shoved her head roughly into the big cake I ordered for Tony. I even said something fitting, "Eat shit." In the chaos, someone called the police. The police station was right across from the KTV, so they arrived quickly. We were all taken to the station and had to give statements one by one. The effects of the 2 bottles of beer were even stronger now. My head was buzzing and felt like it was about to explode. What a deadly beer, truly lethal. The police officer taking my statement looked dignified and upright, clearly a man of integrity. He was very serious in taking my statement while I wallowed in sadness. If I had known, I wouldn't have paid for the room and drinks or even the cake. This birthday party cost me more than a month's salary. It was heartbreaking. "Young lady, do you want to sober up first?" Seeing my dazed state, the police officer offered me a cup of warm water and asked helplessly. His kind and concerned tone made me burst into tears. I couldn't help but cry loudly, clinging to his legs, lamenting about my unfortunate encounters with bad men and the bitches. Why was I so miserable? Wah, officer, now only the police won't abandon me. Can you be my boyfriend? You definitely won't cheat. I cried, stretching my voice. In my daze, I heard the door to the interrogation room open, followed by the police officer's voice, barely containing a smile. "Young lady, I'm married, but my nephew is single. I can introduce him to you." The police officer pointed to a young officer who had just entered. I sniffled a few times and looked in the direction the officer was pointing. A tall, 187 centimeters, long-limbed, rough and manly young police officer with a surging aura of hormones was looking at me with a cool expression. I sniffled a few more times and turned to the first police officer. "All right. What happened next, I can't remember clearly, but I am sure Tony, that bastard, left me alone at the police station and didn't have my friends come to pick me up. When I woke up the next morning, I was in the police station's restroom, covered with a police uniform. Looking at the clean and neat restroom, I was momentarily disoriented. The drinks I had yesterday must have been fake. Now my head felt like it was being stabbed by hundreds of needles, painful and dizzy. After sitting for a while, I recalled some fragments of the previous day. I should have hit harder, I regretted, scratching my head. Why did I only give a right hook and press someone into a cake? I should have given them each a set of military boxing moves. Just as I was regretting not performing better, The door was knocked, then opened. I looked blankly at the door. Awake? Then let's clear your head. I'll take you home. The police officer from yesterday said calmly. Images of him flashed through my mind. Yesterday, I think I forced him to add me on WeChat. Thinking of this, I felt suffocated. Combined with where I was now and the clothes I was covered with, I scrambled to stand up, quickly tidying my clothes, and obediently followed him, not daring to speak. In the police station, even the police dogs probably knew of my glorious deeds. Everyone smiled and watched us leave. I was extremely embarrassed and wished I could dig a hole to hide in. The police officer was likely off duty, dressed in casual clothes instead of his uniform. He walked ahead while I followed behind. He had long legs and walked quickly. I lagged behind, looking at his straight back, and considered taking the chance to sneak away. Forcing someone to add me on WeChat and acting out of line while drunk was already enough of a social death. Being driven home by him, confined in a small car. Just thinking about it made me want to dig a hole for my toes. After all, he is a police officer. One should admire from a distance, not desecrate. Stop. After I had almost made my escape, a voice with authority and no harshness came from behind. It was the police officer. My legs felt like they were nailed to the ground, unable to move. I turned around with a face more distressed than crying. Officer. The term officer made the usually stern and reserved young police officer's ears turn red. He lowered his voice. Am I that old? I was startled and blurted out. Not old at all. You look like you're not married. As soon as I said that, I wished I could slap myself. Why did I bring up that topic? I still got into the police officer's car. He was off duty and just happened to be taking me home. After I nervously gave my address, he seemed momentarily stunned but said nothing. The atmosphere in the car was eerily quiet. I took out my phone to pretend to play with it, trying to distract myself. But I saw a pinned unfamiliar Facebook profile. The profile picture was a cold portrait with the note, Universe's most handsome Rockey. This can't be a note I made myself, right? I originally planned to have Rockey drop me off at the entrance of the neighborhood, but he drove straight into the underground garage. Our neighborhood's underground garage requires a permit or a reserved parking spot to enter. I felt a bit suffocated, gripping the seatbelt tightly, and took a furtive glance at Rockey. Could it be that he's from the same neighborhood? Not only is Rockey from the same neighborhood, but he's also in the same building. And he's my neighbor across the hall. I stood at my door in a daze, watching Rockey open the door across from me. What kind of bizarre coincidence is this? Are you not going in? Rockey opened the door, saw me still standing there in a daze, and asked. I forced a helpless smile. I seem to have lost my keys. Rockey, this is the first time I've seen a guy's place so impeccably clean. In comparison, Tony's place is a complete mess. I sat nervously on the couch, and Rockey handed me a bottle of water. I accepted it with utmost respect and thanked him. No need to be so formal. Rockey also sat down on the couch. I was so startled that I nearly dropped the bottle. My inherent respect for police officers and soldiers, combined with the outrageous things I've done, made me feel a deep sense of reverence for Rockey. So, for a moment, I fell into silence again. During the silence, I thought I heard a sound at my door. It should be the locksmith arriving. I jumped up and bowed 90 degrees to Rockey. Officer Rockey, the locksmith has arrived. I'll head out now. I said this and almost ran out the door. But to my surprise, the person at my door was not the locksmith. It was Tony, that scumbag. I shouted, how do you have a key to my place? I had never given him a key to my home, no matter how much he begged. Tony was in the process of opening my door when he saw me suddenly burst out from the opposite door and yelled. He was startled. My door happened to open, and he slipped and fell inside. Rockey, hearing the commotion, also came out. Tony, having fallen clumsily, was a bit embarrassed. He got up, leaning against the door, and seeing me come out with a tall and handsome man, he started cursing and yelling. So you, Haley, accused me of cheating. Turns out you were the one messing around with another man first. No wonder you wouldn't let me touch you. You prefer this kind. You're a J person. I'll beat you to death. And you wild man, I'll kill you too. Police officer. Rockey pulled me behind him, blocking Tony, who was rolling up his sleeves and advancing toward me. Rockey expressionlessly took out his police badge and showed it to Tony. Illegal entry, insulting others, insulting a police officer, and attempting to assault an officer. Rockey listed a few charges and then said, "Come, go with me to the police station." Hearing that Rockey was a police officer, Tony, who had been so aggressive just moments ago, suddenly deflated. He hesitated and took a few steps back, still trying to act tough. How do I know you're really a police officer? Rockey simply looked at him coldly. Think back, who took your statement last night? At these words, Tony shivered, clearly remembering, and his legs went weak, nearly causing him to fall to his knees. Officer, please let me go. I was just joking with you, Tony said as he tried to make a run for it, but Rockey swiftly restrained him with a firm hold. I'm not joking with you. Rockey's chiseled features were set in a serious expression. Rockey was serious. He really took Tony back to the police station. Officer, we're in a relationship. How can it be called illegal entry if I'm going into her house? I'm innocent. I was just going to get my stuff, Tony desperately argued at the police station. We've broken up, and there's nothing of yours in my house. I couldn't help but snap at Tony. Upon hearing this, Tony clearly wanted to get angry, but, wary of being in the police station, he put on a pretentious smile. Haley, what we had yesterday was just a little lover's spat. How can we be broken up? Didn't you say you bought me the latest Apple phone but just forgot to bring it? Since you're giving it to me, it's my stuff, so it's not a problem for me to go get it. I was utterly stunned by Tony's shamelessness. How did I not realize he was like this when he was pursuing me? He even kissed another woman in front of me and still had the nerve to ask for a birthday gift? And how did an unsent gift become his? And with such a sense of entitlement, I was shaking with anger. Then how did you get a key to her place? Rockey asked with an indifferent expression. We're a couple. Isn't it normal for me to have a key to her house? Tony, seeing that I was too enraged to speak, became even more composed and smug. You're talking nonsense. I never gave you a key to my place. I glared at Tony, who I once thought was handsome and refined but now seemed utterly repulsive. Calm down. Rockey stood up and poured me a glass of water. Looking at Rockey's clear and calm eyes, I gradually calmed down. Yes, I needed to stay calm. Losing my composure would only play into Tony's hands. I took the water, took a few deep breaths, and said, Officer, I never gave him a key to my house. The only possibility is that he either stole it or found it. Also, we broke up yesterday. I haven't sent the Apple phone and I'm not going to give it to him. You're not going to give it to me? Tony looked incredulous. Just because I bought it doesn't mean I have to give it to you. What kind of thief logic is that? I was astonished. I gave you a gift for your birthday too, didn't I? Isn't it normal for you to give me a gift? Tony stood up, getting agitated. Seeing Tony's audacity, I nearly lost it. For your birthday? You gave me 10 bottles of milk, a tub of yogurt, and some snacks. The rest was all filler with Raffy grass. Does that even add up to $100? My face was flushed with anger. Why don't you mention that there was also a down jacket inside? That one cost over $2,000. Tony, caught off guard by my bluntness, looked somewhat flustered. I laughed in disbelief. A down jacket? The one you wore with a note saying you remember to return it after 2 days? You actually gave me a used down jacket with a note saying it needed to be returned. Tony had actually given me a used down jacket with a note saying I should return it after wearing it for 2 days. I was truly stunned by his audacity. I shook my head in disappointment. Tony, I must have been blind to be with someone like you. You and Serena are a perfect match. Please stay away from me. Tony continued to babble about how he and Serena were just friends, but I didn't want to argue anymore. Fine, even if you're just friends, I sighed. I'll say it clearly one more time. Tony, I'm breaking up with you. Please, both you and your friend should never appear in front of me again. Thank you. After leaving the interrogation room, I sat outside, dazed. I felt like such a fool for wasting 6 months with Tony and enduring so much trouble, not to mention dealing with Serena and his bizarre mother. I really wanted to gouge my own eyes out. I blocked Tony's Facebook and phone numbers. Just then, Serena arrived. I gave her a cold stare. What's up? You want to take a bite out of me? Serena asked triumphantly. I raised an eyebrow and said nothing. To be honest, you've been pretty patient. I've been messing with you for 5 months, and you've put up with it all this time. Serena laughed, covering her mouth. But what's the use of enduring so long? Look, he still chose me. Seeing Serena's smug face made me almost want to slap her. I'm giving you trash to go in the trash can. You two are quite a match. Of course, we are. He's even going to give me the new Apple phone. The latest model, worth over $10,000, unlike you, who only got $100 worth of Raffy grass. Serena sneered. My blood boiled. Tony had actually stolen my key to my place to steal the phone and give it to her. I glared at Serena, my sleeves rolled up, ready to slap her when someone stopped me from behind. Calm down. Hitting people is illegal. Rocky's calm voice came from behind me. His arm gently wrapped around my waist, preventing me from attacking Serena. I gritted my teeth, staring at Serena's made-up face, trying to calm down. Rockey was right. I didn't need to leave a criminal record for these two. You probably won't get the Apple phone because I'm not going to give it to Tony, I said coldly, looking at Serena. If you keep doing things that disgust me, I won't just push your head into a cake. After dealing with everything, I left the police station. Let's go. I'll treat you to breakfast. There's a good breakfast place nearby, Rockey said as he walked beside me. I was feeling at my worst and dejected. Officer Rockey, I'm not in the mood. I can't eat. Rockey looked at me and smiled gently. There's no hurdle that can't be overcome. It's better to realize what kind of person someone is in 6 months than to take years to find out. Under the morning light, I saw Rockey smile, and something in my heart was slightly touched. After breakfast, Rockey still dropped me off at home. I suggest you change the lock and install a security camera, Rockey said as he stood at my door. Okay. At the time, I didn't realize how much Rockey's suggestion helped me, including sending Tony's bizarre mother to jail as well. I took a day off from work and had the locksmith replace my door lock with the latest model, equipped with a fingerprint and password system and a surveillance camera. However, during installation, there were some issues with the fingerprint recognition. The locksmith said he would come back the next day to fix it, and since I could still use the password to open the door, I didn't worry too much about it. After finishing everything, I called my best friend. I cried my eyes out. It wasn't just about breaking up with Tony, it was about how I wasted 6 months with this trash. Enduring so much, dealing with Serena and his bizarre mother. My best friend, after hearing all this, took a leave and rushed to my place, saying she wanted to beat Tony up. I told her Tony was already in the police station and that I had hired a lawyer to sue him. My best friend comforted me for a while and said she would take me out to unwind that night. She said the world was full of good men, and it wasn't worth fixating on one dog. Breakups were like sending off a departed friend. It was necessary to drink and cry to say goodbye. That night, my best friend and I put on a sophisticated makeup look and wore sexy dresses to go dancing. I'm not a fan of such environments, but under these circumstances, the deafening music and slightly tipsy feeling were quite exhilarating. I'm telling you, if you like someone tonight, just go for it. There's no shortage of men. My best friend, who was likely drunk, slurred at me. Anyone is fine. I was also quite drunk, slurring back loudly. Go for it. I'm serious. My best friend, with a slightly glazed look, patted her chest and assured me. Then I want that one. I pointed to a man sitting at a booth not far away. He wore a white shirt, my favorite, and had a cool, detached expression, looking very attractive. Most importantly, he looked somewhat familiar. Like him? Then go for it. My best friend slapped my shoulder with enthusiasm, giving me courage. As I stumbled toward him, I nearly fell to the ground, but he reached out and caught me. Hey, are you alone? I wobbled as I sat at the booth, resting my head on my hand and slightly tilting it as I asked. The man said nothing, just sipped his drink, his eyes vaguely assessing me. You're so aloof, but I like you just like that. I was tipsy and poked his chest. His chest felt really good, firm with a bit of softness. I instinctively reached out to touch it. He grabbed my hand. Haley, look closely and see who I am. The man held my hand firmly, speaking with a slight, controlled pressure. I struggled to open my eyes and looked at him. He really did look familiar. A fleeting thought crossed my mind, but I couldn't grasp it. I can't see clearly. I shook my head, grinning, and wrapped my arm around his neck. Pointing to my best friend, who was smiling at me from the dance floor, I proudly said, "My friend told me to go for whoever I like tonight, so I'm going for you." "So you're interested in me again?" The man's cool voice carried a hint of a smirk. Again? My mind was too foggy to understand. I blinked, not catching his meaning. All I could think about were his moist, jelly-like lips, which reminded me of the jelly I ate as a child. I really wanted to bite them, so I did just that. Amidst the deafening music, I heard a sharp intake of breath, then I was pressed against the table. The man took charge, biting me back several times. After that, I lost consciousness and fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, I was woken up by someone. Rockey, dressed in pajamas, with sleep marks on his handsome face and messy black hair, handed me my phone. "Your friend has been calling you non-stop. It's better if you take the call." His voice was hoarse from just waking up, but it had a soothing effect. I looked at Rockey in a daze, answered the call, and accidentally put it on speaker. As my brain was still rebooting and I was staring blankly at Rockey, my friend's loud voice blared from the phone. "So, Haley, how was that guy last night? He looked like he's in great shape." Rockey. I was mortified, totally and utterly mortified in front of Rockey. "Rockey, it's not what you think." After I clumsily ended the call, I knelt on Rockey's bed, looking like I was on the verge of tears. house. Alright, calm down, Rockey said, looking at me with a slight exhale. I slept in the living room last night. Your fingerprint lock wouldn't unlock, and you didn't have your keys. When I asked for the password, you could only. Rockey didn't finish his sentence, but from his unusually red ears, I could tell that I must have done something to him. So I had to bring you back to my place, Rockey said, turning his face away, explaining awkwardly. Thank you so much, Officer Rockey, I said, tearfully grateful. After I tidied myself up a bit and apologized to Rockey profusely, I prepared to go home. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Tony's mother banging on my door, demanding to be let in. Looking at her fierce demeanor made my temples throb. I turned to escape into Rockey's place, but as I turned, I collided with Rockey. Stumbling a bit, he caught me, and inertia caused me to fall into his arms. As I was disoriented, Tony's mother, hearing the commotion, turned around. Seeing me in Rockey's arms, she raised her sleeves and started cursing. So it's you, Haley. You're putting a green hat on my son. Hearing this, I rubbed my head, stepped out of Rockey's embrace, and said calmly, Auntie, Tony and I have already broken up. There's no green hat involved. It's him and his good buddy Serena who put the green hat on me. I couldn't help but raise my voice at the end. When Tony and I were together, no matter how unreasonable or difficult his mother was, I always respected her as an elder and Tony's mother, so I would usually keep quiet. But now, it was different. Her son had wronged me. Why should I still tolerate this? What kind of green hat is that? Tony's mother, big and burly, walked closer to me, almost into Rockey's place, hands on her hips. My son graduated from college. What's wrong with having a few good friends? That's normal. He's a college graduate. I couldn't help but laugh. A college graduate? A pseudo a 985? He couldn't even pass the graduate school exams, and she makes it sound like he's a genius. What are you laughing at? Tony's mother, displeased, slapped my arm and tried to twist it. You promiscuous woman. How dare you find another man? Rockey, quick to react, stepped in front of me, blocking me. Do you want to make a move? What if I do? A wild man. I'll beat you up. Tony's mother, truly a product of her upbringing, spoke just like her son. She shoved Rockey with malice. Then, Rockey called the police. As Tony's mother was being taken away by the police, she kept spewing curses. She said my family only had me as a daughter. If I didn't marry her son, no one would want me. She even cursed my parents with absurdities. I was so angry my face turned red, while Rockey held my face and gave me a deep kiss with a resonant smack. I was stunned, staring at Rockey. Rockey held me close, smiling in a way that irritated me. He said to Tony's mother, her family won't be left without descendants. I'm moving in with her tomorrow and will give her 3 sons, all of whom will have her last name. I've even picked their names, Leo, Gio, and Peo. I'll tear you apart. Tony's mother's face turned red with anger. She tried to lunge at Rockey, but was restrained by the police and taken back to the station to make a statement. The surveillance camera at my door had perfectly captured her causing trouble, cursing, and making a scene, so I didn't need to explain much. I just copied the footage for the police. After the police took Tony's mother away, I kept my head down, unable to face Rockey. This was so embarrassing. Only looking at my head, Rockey asked with a laugh in his voice. Officer Rockey, I awkwardly looked up and bowed deeply, sincerely saying, I'm so sorry. I've caused you trouble. After saying that, I wanted to flee back into my house, but Rockey grabbed my wrist. He didn't say anything, but then he let go of my hand. Before I could even ponder what his action meant, I hurriedly retreated. Nervously, I mistyped the password several times. Rockey hadn't left immediately, and I could feel his gaze on me without turning around. I was sweating all over. After trying for the 4th time, the door finally opened. I went inside, shut the door, and leaned against it, heart racing. Pressing my chest, I thought about Rockey, and a vague, indescribable emotion spread within me. It felt like a fluttering heart. I thought that after being taken away by the police for a talk, Tony's mother would recognize her issues. But she didn't. Instead, she became even more aggressive. She even found the location of my company and tried to come in and harass me. But the building's security measures were good, so she couldn't even get past the front door. Unable to get inside, she waited at the building's entrance for me to get off work. At first, she spoke softly, trying to persuade me with reason and emotion, asking me to drop the case and release Tony. When she realized that didn't work, she started cursing and clinging to me, telling everyone who came out of the building how heartless I was, how I had abandoned my boyfriend, and how I was involved with a young man. I'm not someone who can be easily bullied, so I exposed how Tony had been cheating on me with Serena under the guise of being good friends, even kissing her in front of me, and how he had been taking my money and things to give to Serena. After breaking up with Tony, I also realized that every time he came to my house, the skincare products, cosmetics, and even snacks he took weren't for his mother, but were given to Serena. I really don't know whether to say Serena has no picky taste or Tony is just so calculating. After exposing all this, not only did Tony's mother not feel ashamed, but she also mocked me again, saying that having only one daughter meant my family would be childless. Seeing Tony's mother's smug expression made me want to grind my teeth in anger. In a moment of losing my rationality, I thought of Rockey. Auntie, how could my family be childless? That boy was passionately pursuing me, and although I didn't want to agree, you were right. He even said he was willing to marry into my family and give birth to 3 sons, all of whom would take my surname, named Leo, Gio, and Peo. Thinking about it, I should actually agree to his pursuit. Forget it, I'll agree now, I said with a smile, taking out my phone and pretending to send a message in front of Tony's mother. Seeing this, Tony's mother tried to snatch my phone, but I was quicker, dodging her. As she tried to grab me again, the police restrained her. Tony's mother's repeated harassment had made me inform the security downstairs in advance that if she came again, I would call the police. The security downstairs was already familiar with Tony's mother's troublesome behavior, so when she grabbed me today, they called the police. After understanding the situation, the police took Tony's mother away. I stood there, smiling as I watched Tony's mother leave. As for making people angry, Rockey's words are the best. My smile completely froze when I saw who was in the police car. Rockey, Officer Rockey, Rockey. He was smiling at me with a meaningful grin. Me? Did he hear everything I just said? I was stunned for a few seconds. When I wanted to explain, Rockey gave me a nod and drove away. Me? It's over. Using someone as a shield and making them out to be the one passionately pursuing me. I wanted to cry but had no tears. Why did I have to act so arrogantly? I took out my phone and looked at the pinned Facebook. The note had already been changed back to Officer Rockey. I hesitated, then typed, Officer Rockey. The things I said earlier were just to irritate her. I didn't mean anything else. I looked at the text in the chat box and deleted it all. After deleting and revising for a long time, I still didn't send any message. Forget it. What if he didn't hear it? Sending these messages would be too awkward, right? That night, as I was preparing to go to sleep, Rockey sent a Facebook message. Officer Rockey, I haven't received any message. Me? What message? As I was wondering what message, it suddenly hit me. The things I said during the day. Leo, Gio, Peo. Rockey heard. I wanted to dig a hole and hide, instantly losing all desire to sleep. I quickly typed, Officer Rockey. The things I said earlier were just nonsense. I meant nothing by them. My respect for you is like the endless flow of the Yangtze River. I'm sorry. Please forgive my moment of reckless talk. I'm sorry. Even after sending the message, Rockey did not reply. I was extremely anxious, adding to my troubles and saying he was passionately pursuing me. I buried my head under the pillow and wailed. What on earth have I done? I was set on fire in the middle of the night. When I woke up to the smell of smoke, the door had already been burned so badly that it couldn't be opened. My mind went blank. As I came to my senses and ran back to my room to grab my phone to call the police, a call came in from an unknown number. I clumsily answered, hello, with a tearful voice. It was Rockey's voice. Don't panic. Go to the bathroom, dampen a towel to cover your mouth and nose, and don't inhale the smoke. Stay in the bathroom. I've already called the police and fire department. Don't be afraid. Hearing his calm voice, tears suddenly filled my eyes, and I started to cry. Officer Rockey, sob sob. The door was opened 15 minutes later. Rockey had used the fire hose to put out the fire, but since my door opened outward, he couldn't kick it open and had to wait for the fire department to come and break it down. After the fire was extinguished, I went to the living room. When the door was finally opened, seeing Rockey, who looked a bit disheveled, made my recently stopped tears well up again. Rockey quickly walked over and hugged me. My fear and panic seemed to finally have an outlet, and I burst into tears with a loud sob. I was taken to the hospital for an initial checkup, which showed no serious problems. However, Rockey had suffered burns on his arm. In the emergency room, I stood beside him, wearing Rockey's police uniform, with red eyes, watching the doctor treat the blisters on his arm, and he didn't make a sound. Go sit over there, don't watch, Rockey said gently. I looked at his chiseled face with traces of smoke damage. Looking down, tears streamed down my face. All right, if you want to watch, just watch. Stop crying, Rockey said with a hint of helplessness. He thought I was crying because he asked me not to watch, but I wasn't crying for that reason. The emergency doctor, who seemed to know Rockey, looked at me and teased. Officer Rockey, is this your girlfriend? She's quite pretty. Rockey glanced at me but didn't refute it. Instead, he said, Dr. Zhou, I never knew you were so gossipy. After helping Rockey with his injuries, I gave my statement. During the statement, I suddenly remembered that my home's password lock had built-in surveillance, with cloud storage. When I reviewed the footage, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was Tony's mother. Although she was fully covered and disguised, I still recognized the mole on her forehead and her bulky figure. I gasped in shock. She wanted to kill me? Not only did she pour gasoline at my door, but she also did the same at Rocky's door and then set it on fire. I used to think she was just selfish and ignorant, but I never imagined she would dare to commit arson. I recognized the arsonist, and the police quickly apprehended her. At first, Tony's mother tried to deny it, but the property management had also retrieved surveillance footage showing her disguise a process. Seeing that denial was futile, she began to make a scene at the police station, claiming that it was my fault for not withdrawing the case and releasing Tony, that I deserved this. The police told her that Tony's case wasn't severe and he could be released after some time, but she was looking at a sentence of at least 3 years and up to 10. Upon hearing she would be sentenced to at least 3 years, Tony's mother was completely deflated and collapsed on the ground. Her eyes were vacant, her lips trembling. After looking around at everyone, she crawled toward me on her knees. Rockey immediately stepped in front of me, blocking her. "Haley, please save me. Please save me. Auntie was just joking with you." Tony's mother pleaded, tears and snot streaming down her face as she banged her head. "Auntie had no bad intentions. I was just joking." I felt physically nauseated. Is this a joke? If Rockey hadn't happened to be working late and had seen the fire as he was leaving, I might have been burned to death. Is a life something she can joke about? I tugged at Rocky's sleeve, signaling that I wanted to leave. After leaving the police station, it was already nearly dawn. Looking at the gradually brightening sky, I felt disoriented. I almost lost my life over a failed relationship. "Shall we find a hotel and get some rest?" Rockey asked, standing beside me. Both my home and his were in a mess, with the door still needing repair, so we couldn't sleep at home. I looked at his chiseled features and the bandages on his arm, feeling my eyes well up. "Officer Rockey, the breakfast place you mentioned, is it open now?" I asked, sniffling. "It's open," Rockey replied, his eyes twinkling with a bit of starlight. "As long as you want to eat there, it will be open." My near-death experience from the fire not only alarmed my parents, but also my grandparents. When they arrived, Rockey and I were tidying up the entrance. My grandmother, seeing the mess at the door, almost had a heart attack from the shock. After we settled her down, Rockey brought over some warm water. After taking her medicine and drinking the water, her color improved a bit. "This is outrageous. What kind of demon is this?" My grandmother, enraged after hearing the general situation, pounded the table. "Mom, please take care of your health," my mother said, her eyes red. "Oh, Grandpa, Grandma, Mom, Dad, it's all over now, it's okay." I forced a smile to comfort them, trying to shift their focus. "This is Officer Rockey. He happened to see the fire when he was on his night shift and saved me. He lives right across from me." Rockey also politely smiled at the right moment. "Hello, Grandpa, Grandma, Mom, Dad." My expression changed. My grandparents' expressions changed. My parents' expressions changed too. Rockey quickly realized he had misspoken and tried to salvage the situation. "Hello, Uncle and Auntie. I've heard Haley mention you often, and I slipped up with my words. Please don't mind." I breathed a sigh of relief. My parents' expressions softened a bit. My grandmother, still with a hint of regret on her face, took Rocky's hand and kindly asked how old he was and if he had a girlfriend. Rockey answered all her questions obediently, especially since his police identity made my grandmother like him even more. The older generation holds a great respect for the profession of policing, seeing it as righteous and promising. Hearing that Rockey had no girlfriend and lived right across from me while risking his life to save me, their attitude toward him changed entirely. They continued to ask about his family and personal life, and finally, my grandmother asked, "What do you think of Haley?" I was stunned. "Grandma, what are you doing?" My face turned beet red, and I couldn't bear to look at Rockey. I tried to signal my grandmother to stop asking such questions, but I heard Rockey say, "She's wonderful, very kind. Though a bit scatterbrained, she's adorable, and I really like her." I was so shocked that the apple one was holding fell to the floor with a thud and rolled to his feet. I stared at Rockey in disbelief. What is he saying in front of the elders?" Rockey picked up the apple, placed it in my hand, and gave me a smile. I almost dropped it from the shock. With Rockey's words, my grandmother seemed to find her momentum, and she kept talking to Rockey about my childhood, even getting my grandfather to pull out photos of me as a child from her bag. Photos of me in a belly band, with pigtails, and rosy cheeks. Seeing the photos of myself, I felt both embarrassed and angry. Snatching them away, "Grandma, why are you carrying these around? Even if you brought them, why show them to Rocky? What am I supposed to do with this?" I was at a loss. In my haste to grab the photos, I accidentally touched Rocky's hand. He gasped slightly, and I realized I had touched his injury. "Are you alright?" I immediately held Rocky's hand gently, checking for any blood. "It's fine, don't worry," Rocky comforted, rubbing my head. I'll help my mom," I said in a panic, not knowing where to look. It wasn't until I helped my mom with the vegetables that I suddenly came back to my senses. How does Officer Rocky flirt so well? In my days, I heard my mother yell, "You were supposed to cut the celery stalks, why did you leave the leaves and throw away the stalks?" Since the day Rocky had dinner at my place, he successfully won the approval of my grandparents and my parents. According to my grandmother, Rocky looked like a good kid, full of righteousness, with a straight back that made people feel happy just by looking at him. Even my mother privately asked me if I was seeing Rocky. I said no, and that I was hesitant to date anyone casually now, fearing I might encounter someone like Tony again. Although Rocky isn't like that, I still felt uneasy. But my mother said that people should look forward, and encountering a bad person doesn't mean anything. When dating again, one should keep their eyes open, especially for someone they plan to marry. She said that she and my grandmother thought Rocky was a good man and someone I could marry. I was extremely helpless, constantly explaining that Rocky and I were really not in a romantic relationship. But it seemed they didn't completely believe me, especially my grandmother, who entirely saw Rocky as a potential son-in-law. The more they talked about it, the more there was an unclear and ambiguous meaning between Rocky and me. Moreover, we lived too close to each other, just across the hall. Sometimes after work, he would bring me a late-night snack, or after an overnight shift, he would bring me breakfast in the morning. I would also make some small desserts on weekends and give them to him. "Is it good?" I asked Rocky, who was tasting the new cake I made. "It's good." Rocky looked up at me and smiled. "Of course, it's at a store level," I said proudly. A bit of cream was on the corner of his lips, and I instinctively took a tissue to wipe it off. The moment I wiped it away, I realized what I had done. I immediately tried to withdraw my hand, but Rocky was quicker. He grabbed my hand and said earnestly, "Haley, I like you. Can you be with me?" Rocky's palm was large, dry, and warm. Facing his intense gaze, I felt a bit overwhelmed. I licked my dry lips and asked, "Do you policemen always speak so directly?" Hearing this, Rocky chuckled softly. "When you like someone, you should be straightforward." I was so embarrassed that my ears turned red. I wanted to pull back my hand, but he held it firmly in his palm, looking a bit cute, and said, "Haley, can you give me a chance?" "Can I?" "Yes, I can. Since being with Rocky, I have come to understand what true love is. Love is not a one-sided effort but a mutual pursuit. The shadow Tony cast over me has gradually been driven away by Rocky. When I saw him again, I remembered there was such a person. That day, Rocky and I went to the cinema to watch a movie. When I was crying in his arms, I heard a quarrel from the back row that sounded somewhat familiar. "You say you were working late with your colleague. Is this working late? His hand was almost on your lap." Tony's voice was somewhat sinister. "Tony, stop talking nonsense. I was just watching a movie with him." Serena's voice was heard. "Watching a movie is the next step to go to a hotel." Tony pulled on Serena's necklace and said, "You're wearing the token Elle gave you and getting involved with another man." Then came a crisp slap sound. I watched these two people in shock. People around us started taking videos with their phones. Seeing so many people recording, Serena ignored the slap she gave Tony, grabbed her bag, covered her face, and ran away crying. Then Tony and the guy who came with Serena started fighting. The cinema security quickly came over and separated the two. After that, I didn't know what happened. Because I found it unlucky, I took Rocky and left first. Later that evening, as I was preparing to sleep, Rocky knocked on my door. He was wearing the same couple's pajamas and slippers as mine. "Why are you here now?" "I'm so tired," I said, opening the door and sleepily walking to the sofa. Rocky followed me in and closed the door. "Haley," Rocky came to me and knelt on one knee. I struggled to open my eyes and saw Rocky holding a ring box in his hand. Inside the blue velvet box was a large diamond ring, shining with a brilliant light. Rocky knelt on one knee and said sincerely, "I know this is sudden, and we haven't been together for long, but I really love you. I want to spend my life with you. You can refuse me, and if you do, I'll try harder. It's just a birthday gift for you, and you don't need to feel any pressure." Rocky patted my head gently, his eyes full of tenderness. I looked at the diamond ring and then at Rocky, who was entirely focused on me, and my heart raced. After a long moment, I finally found my voice. Which finger does a proposal ring go on? After agreeing to Rocky's proposal, he took me to meet his parents. His father is a university professor, and his mother runs a company. They are very strong-willed but surprisingly easy to get along with. Their attitude was, we won't interfere in your daily life, but where we are needed, we will go all out. Before we parted, Rocky's mother gave me a thick red envelope and a box with a very fine jade bracelet inside. I hesitated to accept it and tried to refuse, but his mother firmly pushed everything into my arms and said seriously, Auntie really likes you. This gift and the red envelope are just formalities, you must accept them. Then, she whispered in my ear, if this brat bullies you, just tell me, and I'll teach you how to deal with him. Rocky, standing beside us, helplessly said, Mom, your whisper is a bit too loud. I chuckled and felt completely relaxed. After meeting both sets of parents, they arranged to meet each other. It was as if they had known each other forever. During their conversation, they even began imagining our future, including having children and them helping out with the joy of it all. In the end, they almost wanted us to get married right then and there. Regarding the issue of the child's surname, Rocky must have informed his parents in advance. He said that since I had carried the child for 10 months and risked my life to give birth, the child should bear my surname. Rocky's parents had no objections. His father, a university professor, did not agree with the notion that a surname is for continuing the family line. In his view, after people die, they can't control their descendants. The surname doesn't matter, the child is still the precious one of their family. Rocky's mother said that as a fellow woman, she understands the hardships of childbirth, so it was completely fine for the child to have my surname. Seeing Rocky's parents being so reasonable, my parents felt a bit embarrassed and proactively suggested that the first child take Rocky's surname and the second one mine. After finalizing the details, both sets of parents gave us the household registration book and a bank card. The household registration book was for us to get our marriage certificate, and the bank card contained the money they had prepared for buying a house. As for the wedding, they still needed some time to prepare. According to them, since they only have one child, the wedding must be done properly. Seeing them eager and prepared, Rocky and I felt a bit overwhelmed. Shall we go get the marriage certificate tomorrow? Rocky asked, satisfied and content, holding me that night. I was so exhausted that I said casually, sure, just let me sleep, I'm so tired. At the moment I was falling asleep, I heard Rocky say, Haley, I really love you. Rocky woke me up before dawn. I was grumpy and looked at him resentfully. He seemed unaware of it, rummaging through my wardrobe and holding up different clothes, asking, Honey, do you want to wear this one, or this one, or this one, or this one? I turned over to sleep, mumbling, none of them, I want to sleep. For the first time, Rocky didn't follow my lead. He pulled me up, saying, No way, I won't feel at ease until we get the certificate. Get up quickly, I've already squeezed the toothpaste for you. When we were dressed and standing at the Civil Affairs Bureau, it was still closed. Rocky was pressed against the glass of the door, trying hard to look inside. Seeing him like that, I couldn't help but laugh. Officer Rocky, you're so cute, I said, pinching his face, loving him even more. After we were together, I found that Rocky is an outwardly cold but inwardly warm person. He seems distant to others, but is affectionate with me, giving kisses, hugs, and lifting me up. You can hardly imagine a 187 centimeters tall guy acting so adorably. It was only when the 2 official red books with stamps were handed to us that I felt a bit dazed. Marriage, was it really this simple? No endless negotiations over dowries, only the warm blessings from both sets of parents. Darling. After leaving the Civil Affairs Bureau, Rocky ignored everyone else, cupped my face, and gave me a big kiss. He then posted a moment, sharing our photo and marriage certificate with the caption, from now on, officially husband and wife. After getting our marriage certificate, Rocky and I finally remembered to look at houses. There are many things to consider for the new house. The future schooling for our children, the number of people in the family, how to lay out the house, etc. I was overwhelmed by the choices. I found a property I was quite satisfied with and went to see it in person. Rocky and I decided not to consider pre-sale properties due to their instability. Recently, several real estate projects had failed, and many people had no way to complain. So, we chose a ready-to-move-in property. The location and size of the house were quite suitable. Just as we were about to make the payment and sign the contract, Rocky was called back to his office for an urgent task. Before leaving, he handed me his bank card and hurriedly said, Just write your name. I have to go now. You'll go back on your own later. Be safe. He then ran back to give me a quick kiss before waving goodbye. I felt a bit embarrassed, but the sales clerk was very natural. She smiled and said, "You and your husband really seem to be in love." While waiting for the contract to print, I was sitting on the sofa, playing on my phone. "Hey, isn't that Haley? Are you here to look at houses too?" Serena, dressed in a provocative short skirt and elaborate makeup, sat down in front of me. I ignored her and continued to focus on my phone. "What's wrong? Can't we chat? Which property are you interested in? You'd better tell me because I don't want to be in the same neighborhood as you." Serena casually twirled her fingers and held them out towards me. I noticed the diamond ring on her hand and raised an eyebrow. Is she trying to show off? I silently extended my left hand and played with my hair. The diamond ring on my finger was significantly larger than hers. Serena's face turned a bit sour, but she quickly retorted, "Probably fake, right? Just for your own amusement?" I didn't respond because the sales clerk came over and politely handed me the contract, saying, "Ms. Haley, please check if there are any issues with the contract. We are buying the house with full payment, right?" I smiled politely, "Yes." When Serena heard me say yes, her face turned green with envy. As she was about to speak, a young man sat down beside her and wrapped his arm around her waist. She leaned into his embrace. "Friend?" the man asked. "Not exactly a friend," Serena replied coquettishly. I got goosebumps and signaled the sales clerk to switch tables. Before leaving, I coldly told Serena, "Serena, I'm not as easy to bully as you think. I'm not going to argue with you. I just don't want to waste time. Try to be a better person and stop pushing me to expose what you've done." Finally, I smiled and added, "By the way, I was at the cinema that day too." With that, I walked away, leaving Serena to panic and explain behind me. I didn't want to stoop to her old tricks. I had moved on from those messy issues. During my time with Rockey, I seemed to have completely transformed into a gentler, softer person. I no longer wanted to waste time on past grievances. I had a bright future ahead. As for them, let fate handle it. Our wedding was traditional Chinese. Both sets of parents were very traditional, and we also liked the Chinese-style phoenix coronet and bridal robes. After the wedding, we went on our honeymoon, and then I got pregnant from the honeymoon. When we found out about the pregnancy, Rockey was ecstatic. He picked me up and spun me around before calling both sets of parents. Both sets of parents, overjoyed, rushed to our home simultaneously. From then on, I was treated like a national treasure. At night, when I woke up frequently due to the pregnancy, I would see Rockey staring at me intently. His expression was quite pitiful. When he saw me wake up, he pouted and said, "Wife, I haven't had enough of our time alone together." Sob sob. Is this really my tall and mighty officer Rockey? I was carrying twins. When it was confirmed that we were having twins, both sets of parents were thrilled as if it were New Year's. Only Rockey gently caressed my belly and said I had worked hard. When I was 5 months pregnant, Rockey had to handle a dispute involving Tony and Serena. The young man I saw at the sales office was Serena's new partner. He was a wealthy second generation. After being with this wealthy second generation, she kicked Tony out. Tony, of course, was unwilling to accept it. He had even served time in jail for her, leaving a criminal record. Yet she said she just kicked him out and found a rich second generation partner. The young man was the one who took Serena to view houses, but it seems the deal fell through in the end. After multiple failed attempts to reconcile, Tony directly sent videos of them together to the wealthy second generation, who immediately broke up with Serena. However, Serena claimed she was pregnant. In hesitation, the wealthy second generation's mother intervened and had Serena aborted. She also threw a stack of explicit photos at Serena's face. It turned out that Serena had been involved with the wealthy second generation's father, and the child she was carrying was not the son of the wealthy second generation, but his younger brother. When I heard this, I was dumbfounded and shocked. This was so melodramatic. I didn't hear the ending of the story, as hearing these things while pregnant was truly distressing. During my pregnancy, I was well taken care of with a balanced diet and minimal weight gain apart from the baby. Additionally, I was in good health, so after a comprehensive assessment, we chose a natural delivery. On the day of labor, Rockey was on a mission. My mother and Rockey's mother accompanied me for the delivery. Although I had an epidural, it didn't eliminate all the pain, and I still felt it quite intensely. After 3 hours, I gave birth to a pair of twins, a boy and a girl, completing our family with a son and a daughter. When the midwife placed the tiny babies in my arms, the indescribable feeling was unforgettable and will stay with me for a lifetime. As I was wheeled out of the delivery room, Rockey immediately came to meet me, still in his police uniform. His hands trembled as he held my face, his lips were slightly pale, and his eyes were red. He kissed me and said, I'm sorry for not being there with you. When I married him, I knew that he bore not only the responsibility of being with me but also his mission and his duty to the people. He doesn't entirely belong to me. So, even though there was a small regret, seeing him as I left the delivery room made me very content. I kissed him back, smiling, Officer Rockey, from today on, we are a happy family of 4. Rockey, choked up, replied, all right, from now on, the 3 of us will protect you. The end. Epilogue. Regarding the second child, I had considered it and brought it up with Rockey, but he firmly refused. His reason was that I had suffered too much during the first pregnancy. He said that we already had a perfect family with a son and a daughter, and there was no need for a second child. His words made me give up on the idea. When the Dragon and Phoenix twins were 4 and started kindergarten, both our parents were finally free, and so was I. Rockey took a few days off to take me out for a break. Then a month later, we discovered we were expecting a second child. When the pregnancy test showed 2 lines, Rockey and I stared at each other, reaching the conclusion that the quality of the products from Jay's store was really not up to standard. We urgently convened a family meeting to discuss whether to keep the second child. Both sets of parents were astonished but overjoyed. Since both Rockey and I are only children, they hoped we would have more children to fill the home with noise and joy. I wanted to keep the second child, but Rockey was the only one opposed. His reason was still the same as before. Because of this, we ended up in a Cold War. I thought that what was in the past was in the past, and now that we had one, why not keep it? Besides, we could afford it. For this reason, I didn't let him return to our room for 3 days. He was also busy at work and didn't come home for 2 days. On the 4th day, I finished watching a TV show and went to bed early. Both kids were staying with Rockey's parents or my parents, so I enjoyed the quiet. In the middle of the night, when I woke up due to a need to use the bathroom, I was startled to see Rockey crouched by the bedside, his eyes red. My mind was blank, and I forgot about our Cold War, instinctively asking, "Why are you sitting here?" Rockey paused for a moment, then got up and hugged me. "Just have the baby if you want to. Let's stop the Cold War, okay?" I was surprised. Later, I learned that Rockey had been on duty that day, and a colleague of his had nearly sacrificed his life. After this incident, he realized that life is unpredictable and that cherishing the present is most important. He didn't want to be unhappy with me over the issue of having a second child. He had come to terms with it, and as long as I was willing, he would fully support it. Rockey was initially worried about the risks of having a second child, but the doctor assured him that my body was in good condition after the first pregnancy and that having a second child wouldn't be a problem. That put Rockey's mind at ease, but he remained anxious. If I turned over in my sleep, he would wake up in alarm, not to mention the increasingly frequent nighttime trips to the bathroom. When it was finally time for delivery, Rockey made up for the regrets he had from the first time. He stayed with me throughout the process. A man who showed no mercy to criminals trembled so much while cutting the umbilical cord that he almost didn't cut it through. During this postpartum period, I received care that surpassed what I had during the first pregnancy. He was so attentive that he practically wanted to do everything for me, even going to the bathroom. He took on the responsibility of caring for both children himself. By the way, our second set of twins was also a Dragon and Phoenix pair, this time a brother and sister. My parents and Rockey's parents were so happy they wanted to celebrate with firecrackers for a whole month. When the second pair of twins turned 1 year old, I was cleaning the house and found Rockey's medical records. It was a record of a vasectomy. The date on it was the day after Rockey and I resolved our disagreement about having another child. That night, I brought it up and asked Rockey why he had undergone the surgery. He hesitated before telling me he didn't want me to suffer through childbirth again, as even contraception is not 100% reliable. So he had the surgery as a double layer of insurance. When the second set of twins was 3 years old, they reached the age where even cats and dogs found them annoying. I had their older brother and sister take care of them. Watching the siblings annoy each other to the point of frustration, I sipped my milk tea leisurely. Indeed, only magic can counteract magic. Mom, handle the little ones. They're fighting over a cheese stick again. The second child, Leo, was so frustrated she came running to complain. Hikek is already taking care of it. I glanced at the situation and relaxed again. The oldest, Kyo, was holding one of the younger ones in each hand, his face flushed as he reasoned with them. No longer the composed and mature child he once was. See, it's much better for children to be lively and playful rather than always serious. Seeing that I wasn't reacting, the second child quickly joined in, each of them holding one of the younger ones to separate them. To calm the cheese stick dispute, I took the 4 kids out for a stroll. The older ones were quite independent, and even took the initiative to help with the younger ones. With the help of a nanny, managing the 2 little ones was quite easy for me. While we were eating, a male voice called out to me from behind. "Haley?" I turned around and saw Tony. At first, I didn't recognize him. When he introduced himself awkwardly, I finally remembered. He had aged a bit, and his vitality seemed diminished. Even after recognizing him, I only nodded faintly and continued eating. Although the 3rd and 4th children were quite mischievous, they behaved well in public, eating their meal obediently. Seeing that I was ignoring him, Tony started a conversation. "You're out with so many kids? Helping relatives take care of them before summer vacation?" Tony looked at the 4 children next to me with envy. "No, they're all mine." I wiped a bit of food off the 4th child's lips, and she smiled up at me sweetly, saying, "Thank you, Mom." "You're welcome, sweetie," I said, patting her little head. When I looked up at Tony again, he looked like a statue, unable to believe his eyes, glancing from the children to me. "All of these are yours and Rocky's." After a long pause, Tony finally asked, struggling with his words, "Is there a problem?" I asked, somewhat displeased. I didn't really want to see Tony. It wasn't about holding a grudge. I just simply didn't want to see him. It ruined my mood. No. Tony fumbled for an excuse and then said, "Haley, you're more beautiful than ever," completely unlike a mother of 4. "If we hadn't broken up, what would you have done if we hadn't broken up?" Rockey, dressed casually, appeared behind Tony, his face serious as he asked. Before I could say anything, all 4 children joyfully called out at Dad, drawing the attention of the diners around us. "Shh! Kids, we must be quieter in public." I quickly signaled the children to lower their voices. The children obediently complied. Rockey sat down next to me, his arm around my waist as a sign of possession. "You just said, if we hadn't broken up, what would you have done?" Rockey asked again. In recent years, Rockey had been promoted due to his repeated achievements. With age, he had become more composed, and his serious demeanor now had an intimidating presence. No. Tony hastily found an excuse and left in a hurry. After Tony left, Rockey, ignoring the public setting and the children, gently held my face and kissed me deeply with a hint of jealousy. "How can a mother of 4 still attract so much attention?" I playfully replied, "Maybe we should have a 3rd child. Perhaps when I'm a mother of 6, I won't be so charming anymore." Rockey, the oldest, Keo, covered his own eyes and the 2nd child, Leo's, eyes, saying, "Don't look, don't listen." The 2nd child then covered the 3rd and 4th children's eyes, repeating, "Don't look, don't listen." Later, my best friend told me that despite the dramatic breakup between Tony and Serena, they never actually split up. Tony, unwilling to accept being discarded by Serena after all he had invested, continued to be with her. And Serena, after her troubles with the wealthy family, had a damaged reputation and thus settled for being with Tony. They even obtained a marriage certificate but didn't hold a wedding. Later, when Tony's mother was released from prison and saw that they had been married for 4 years without children, she aggressively had Serena examined at the hospital. It was discovered that Serena had difficulty conceiving due to numerous abortions. Tony's mother, infuriated, beat Serena in the hospital. From then on, Tony's mother grew even more intolerant of Serena, constantly tormenting her. Serena and Tony's marriage was quite rocky. Serena looked down on Tony, and Tony had his own grievances. But in recent years, Tony had done well, earning a bit of money. Serena, unwilling to divorce, continued the tumultuous relationship. Now with Tony's mother also involved, their life had become even more chaotic. I wasn't really concerned with how they were doing. I'm very happy with my life now. My parents live close by, my in-laws are considerate, the children are well behaved, I have a career, and close friends. My husband is completely devoted to me, even putting me before the children. My life feels complete. In the evenings, I would cling to Rockey. Afterward, he tenderly kissed me and gently asked why I was so clingy today. I looked up, kissed him back, and smiled. "Rockey, meeting you is the luckiest thing that has ever happened to me." Rockey kissed me in return, with warmth and affection. The same goes for me. The end. If you like Puppy's story, please follow and like it. Updated every morning at 9 a.m.